All right, guys, welcome back to RTW's Wild History Ride. I'm Thomas.
I'm Will.
And I'm Rhonda.
And on today's episode, we will be talking about the last two wives of Henry VIII.
Catherine Parr.
And, oh God, what was her name?
Catherine Howard.
Catherine, oh, the Catherines. The Catherines.
Well, that was better than our initial practice intro, don't y'all think?
Agreed.
I do. Well, I kind of liked, because originally I think me and Rhonda had a whole skit where she was Napoleon, I was Anne of Cleves. Like, I don't know. I kind of like that one a little bit better, though.
Oh, but yes, today's episode we will be talking about the last two Catherines that Henry was married to, Catherine Howard and Catherine Parr. I will be talking about Catherine Howard.
And I'll be talking about Catherine Parr.
And Will just gets to sit in the corner and, I can't say look pretty, but...
Oh, yeah. Shoot, I'm beautiful. I'm telling you.
He'll just participate.
But we did have a friend, though, a few weeks ago tell us that when listening to the podcast, she could tell Will was the pretty face.
Well, I'm so, like, it's so, I'm so surprised that she was born blind and deaf. Like, I'm so surprised. That's our blind and deaf friend.
But, yeah, I don't have any response to that. I thought I would, but I'm just going to go on.
She knows who she is. Yes. I'm not going to say her name.
Maybe it's time to go on with the show.
Yeah, let's not call people out too much.
Shoot.
So I'm going to be talking about Catherine Howard, as I said. She was the fifth wife of Henry VIII, and she was quite a bit younger than the others. She was born in 1523. She was the... Go ahead.
Wow, that is quite a bit younger because Henry was born in 1491.
Yeah, so that would make him, 32 years older? Is my math correct?
That's just like a trend throughout history, I feel like. Like, the men always love their little young ladies.
Well, usually when it's the kings, they'll marry somebody when they're young, and then they'll get a really, really young second wife when they're done killing the first one.
Well, he needs like a cool, hip, like older wife. Like, that's who he needs,
Well, he had that with Catherine of Aragon.
Yeah, true. That's true.
Well, you got to think, this was a man that was super athletic, super energetic, and he's deteriorating at this point. He's middle-aged when he meets her, and he doesn't feel like he used to. So this cute little bubbly girl makes him feel young again. And she was the definition of the death of all men that have, what would be the term, low self-control. Mm-hmm. She's cute, she's pretty, she's energetic, and she's very, very friendly.
She's cute and hot and everything that you're not.
You mean beyond flirtatious?
Yes.
Okay.
She's very, very open, and that made Henry feel young. And like I said, that is a very strong weakness for all men that don't have much willpower. They just can't fight against it. So Catherine was his kryptonite in this situation. But she was the fifth child of a very minor aristocrat. I wouldn't call him a noble anymore because his father was a duke, but he was the third son of the duke. So he wasn't getting much from daddy. His brother is now the duke, so he's getting even less. So by this point, by her young age, her dad was basically begging other relatives for money to take care of them because he didn't have any skills aside from being a noble. Being an aristocrat.
Well, what is like a noble's job? Like what? Like just like from someone from my perspective.
Well, back then, a noble's job would be to protect the people that are under their jurisdiction. So if you're a duke, you're the duke over this area. You represent them. It's kind of like our representatives today.
Yeah.
That you represent these people, and so you make sure the citizens in your area are taken care of.
Okay.
Now that position kind of has dwindled down so much over the years to where you have a duke title, but they don't do anything. It's just.
Well,
yes.
And what I was thinking, I was like, is it kind of similar to, like, which I never attribute anything like on the History Channel. Like, yeah, it's the History Channel, but they can probably take their creative liberties. I kind of think of like how maybe Ragnar was like an earl or jarl or whatever.
No, it's actually, you could say that, but it's actually very different because in Viking society, a jarl, which is the Norse equivalent of a earl, is actually the leader of a community. So it just means that they had too small of a force to call them king.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
In Norse society, they're the same position. It's just a king has a lot more people under them.
He didn't by the end. Shoot, he was a king by the end there.
And that's what happened. He ended up conquering other kings, and he took their land.
Yep.
So whenever he did that, he became a king because he had such a strong force.
Okay.
They even had titles like Sea King, which just meant that you didn't have any land that you owned, but you had such a massive fighting force and ships that you had enough people under you that you could be considered a king.
That's cool. Okay, so that makes more sense in the sense of that.
Yeah, so in their case, the titles is more about population size of people under you. Mm-hmm. So, but in the terms of English society, it's broken up into tiers. You've got Duke, Earl, Baron, Marquis. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that's between a Duke and an Earl. But just real quick question. You may have a really cool title, but your wealth is dependent on
taxes.
Property. Oh, taxes.
Property
I was thinking property because, if you own a lot of property and you have people renting the property from you,
yes,
and you have agriculture going on where you have crops that are coming into you as far as cash, then I think that's what that's all about, right?
Yes. So at one point in time, it would have been kind of like the Duke collected the tax at one point in time. I don't know about this point in history in the 1500s, how it was set up, if they had that much power back then. But at one point in the time, the Dukes were kind of like the rulers of their county, of their little districts or whatever you want to break it up into. And then eventually the power kind of left them and went to the king, which then eventually went to the parliament and the governing body.
Okay.
So I'm not entirely sure about when things like that started happening. But yes, at some point in time, the lowest ranking one would collect the taxes from the people. They'd give the majority to the higher person up. And when you start collecting all that from so many people, it amounts to something.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So,
I just wanted a little history.
Everybody gets their little cut.
Okay.
So
he wasn't getting no cuts, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So her father was basically a nobody because he had two older brothers who would have been the Duke, and most likely his older brother would have been an Earl or something else, or he would have been smart and gone into some other business to stay alive.
Yeah.
This guy did not. He had 10 children. Once you included his, actually, I think he had more because he had stepchildren because he was his wife's second husband. But either way, he was begging people for money, and her mother died when she was 10, and that's when her dad decided, I can't take care of them, so I'm shipping them off to my step grandmother to raise. And now the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk was not a very attentive woman. She was not a strong authority figure. She did not have much control over her household. So Catherine got kind of wayward because she was led astray by older girls in the house. And that was a common thing where kings want to marry noble blood. So they and other nobles want to marry into noble households.
Yeah.
So even if you don't have a household anymore, if you're aristocratic blood, you have some marriage ability. Mm-hmm. You're worth something in a marriage because you can keep a strong bloodline. So in this situation, these girls were sent to this house to live with her, and she did not watch over them. The older girls would have drinking parties at night. They'd invite men into their bedrooms at night, just kind of wild and free.
Well, hang on. Let me just throw this in here. Now, wasn't she a relative of Anne Boleyn?
Yes, I believe. I can't remember if they were first cousins or second cousins, but they were related. I believe that. I want to say that Anne's mother and Catherine's mother or Catherine's father were siblings, but I want to say that's wrong. But that's what I remember reading. So, and I can pull that up later and double check my notes. For some reason, I didn't put the exact relation. I think it's because I covered it in another person, and I put it in their file or in their section, and I don't have it on Catherine.
They're related. They're from the same side of the tracks.
I guess I would have done it on Jane because the three of them were cousins. Mm-hmm. So,
okay,
but she was about, I believe it was 12, 13 when she met a music teacher, Henry Mannix, who was, according to history, possibly quite a bit older than her and single. Now, there's these theories that he was very creepily grooming this young girl. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they supposedly did things. We don't have any evidence to support it, but that's what was claimed. And it's just very, very creepy.
Well, wait a minute. To clarify, you're saying they had a relationship.
Yeah, they apparently had relations. But from what is known about history is that what little bit of their relationship that is believed to be real is that he was abusive and he was constantly pressuring her into doing things with him. Mm-hmm. And it was not necessarily consensual on her part. Now, after him came a man named Derham. Oh, wait, hold on a second.
These names are very cool, by the way. Just a side note.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Yes, Catherine did admit to sexual conduct with Mannix, the music teacher, during her inquiry or her inquisition, whatever it would be called, whenever she was arrested later on.
Interrogation, whatever.
What it would become interrogation. But she admitted that they had relations, but oh God, I can't believe I'm saying these words.
She was a victim.
He didn't get the job done, kind of thing. She was pressured into letting him touch her, but she never let him go all the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
she's a victim.
More or less in this one. Now, apparently the relationship with them ended, and she started a relationship with a man named Francis Derham. Now, they did become lovers. They were intimate. And in private, and sometimes around the other girls, they would refer to each other as husband and wife. And he would let her hold on to his money whenever he was away on business and handle his affairs at home.
Now, what was the age difference between these two? Do we know?
I don't know because it doesn't list his age.
Okay.
But I'm assuming that at the time she would have probably been, this would have been 1538-ish. So she would have been 14, 15. And I'm assuming that he, having enough money to take care of a household, I would assume that he would be well into his 20s, probably around my age.
Well, that was more accepted, I feel like, back then. Anyway.
Yeah, it was. I mean, look at your grandmother and grandfather. They were, 50 years apart?
I don't know if it was that much, but it was quite a bit.
Yeah, it was a significant number. But so they were very, very intimate. And eventually they got caught by the Dowager Duchess, who made them end it. But supposedly, now this, again, is something that's not confirmed because of the inquiry that came on later on. But supposedly that they were pre-contracted to be married. Now, in the eyes of the church, if they had sworn any vows and then been intimate with each other, it amounts to a contract. They were married. Which, if that was the case, that would make her marriage to Henry illegitimate, illegal. Like she would have been basically committing polygamy, a serious crime.
Yeah.
But by I believe it was 1539, she was brought by her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, to be a lady in waiting to Anne of Cleves. Now, noticing Henry's attention to this young, vivacious girl, the Duke of Norfolk conspires to increase his family standing, especially after all the catastrophe of Anne Boleyn.
Yeah.
I mean, he's basically been spending the past few years thinking, I'm dead, I'm dead, I'm dead, I'm dead, I'm dead, I'm dead, I'm dead.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Honestly.
Okay, can I throw something in here real quick?
Yes.
We've been talking about these women, Henry's wives, and last week we were talking about, I think we brought up the word homewrecker in talking about Anne.
Yes.
And I was thinking about this past week, and we may have to rethink some of this because I'm sure these women had ambition, in particular Anne, and some of the other women too, more than likely. We know Catherine of Aragon was a strong person, but of course she was already, a daughter of a king and queen, and
she was the daughter
confident, and she was already powerful anyway.
Well, she was the beloved daughter of the most powerful royal couple in the world at the time.
Right, but the point I'm getting to is maybe we need to rethink some of our terminology or some of our thought processes of these women, because maybe it wasn't necessarily that they had so much ambition that they wanted to be the wife of the king, but maybe it was also their family pushing them, not in Catherine of Aragon's part, because obviously her parents did want her to marry Henry, to marry the future king of England. But Anne, maybe her family was pushing her to get her into this position. Obviously, It sounds like Catherine Howard's family, same family, pushing her into that position also.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it was, but at the same time, you got to have the logic to realize if Henry is willing to jeopardize his relationship with Spain over some hot young thing, what's he going to do when the next thing walks along? I mean, they were stupid in what they did. They were very, very foolish at the very least, because it's obvious by this point that this king has no care who he's married to as long as it serves the purpose he wants, and he will easily throw them away regardless. So anyone who thinks stupidly that they could earn favor by marrying someone to the king, especially this particular king, is a moron.
Well, if you think about it, I'm sure a lot of the people at the time said something like, "Oh, my daughter won't do that. My daughter will be the just the ticket." Something like that. Like, you don't go into a marriage thinking like, "Oh, well, she might be beheaded."
I would.
Well,
that's how I would think. I would think, okay, this dude put his first wife up in some ratty old building that's leaking where she died, most likely from poor air circulation and liquid in her lungs. And then his second wife, he chopped her head off.
Okay, but what if any of those wives, other than obviously Jane Seymour, had a son with Henry?
Oh, they would have been safe.
There you
Exactly.
go. That was the gamble.
Well, and I mean,
It isn't worth it. It isn't worth it because he's going to take out the whole family. He's not just going to take the one wife that pissed him off.
But if you think about it, though, like, also women at the time didn't really have any other ways of rising to the occasion besides marrying wealthily.
Yeah.
So you got to think, like, Anne probably was like, well, hey, if I'm going to get anything done anyway, I'm going to have some kind of affluent person to grab onto. So, I mean,
and I'm not denying that. I'm just saying it has to come to somebody's mind at some point in time to realize that marrying somebody off to this dude in particular
for sure.
is stupid. I mean, that's just idiotic. You think, oh, my daughter will give you a son. Dude, your daughter's going to be dead.
Well, me and Rhonda love Anne, is what we're trying to say. Is what we're trying to say.
All right, well, let's move on because, like I said, the Duke was trying to push forward his agenda, and he thought he could manipulate Henry, and he did to some extent. Now, Henry's quoted as calling her the very jewel of womanhood. Now, there's some myth that he called her his rose without a thorn. Now, nobody ever heard him say that. It's just something that people came up with to make her sound more interesting.
If someone called me that or something, I'd be like, shut up. Like, that's not how people talk.
So, they met in 1539. They married 28 July 1540. The same day, Henry had Cromwell executed. Yep. And it became a public, I guess they had a public ceremony about it on August 8th. So about 12 days later. Still, I mean, you had a wedding on this dude's execution. I know you didn't like the guy, but that's a party and you're throwing it on the day this dude's dying? That is extreme.
I mean,
is there anything about Henry VIII that isn't extreme?
No. But again, she was very different from Jane. Now, we talked about Anne. We talked about everybody and their different styles. Like Catherine and Jane were more conservative and more regal and respectful. And then you have Anne, who's this very extreme woman with her French fashions and her French styles. Well, we come back into that with Catherine, who apparently has to wear a brand new outfit every single day.
Ooh.
That's French style.
Getting a Marie Antoinette vibe.
She was getting new jewels and new clothes every day. She didn't wear the same thing over. Well, didn't matter because it didn't last long, because by 1541 she was being blackmailed because she was involved with a man by the name of Thomas Culpeper. And there's even letters from the two of them, correspondence that they had about their love for each other. And Anne Boleyn's former sister-in-law, who was, I guess, in Catherine's household, would watch the back room so she could help sneak Catherine away from her rendezvous with Thomas Culpeper. Yeah, really stupid.
Yeah.
Catherine's
These
a
people
real
are
one.
not
Catherine's a ride or die. Or who'd you say that was? Who watched the door?
That would be Lady Rochford.
Listen, she's a ride or die.
You remember Anne Boleyn's brother was accused of incest with her?
Yeah.
That's his wife.
Well, she's a ride or die. That's
Yeah.
all I can say.
So on November 7th, 1541, Cranmer led counselors to question her, and she apparently was kind of in shock. He's even quoted as saying, "I never saw no creature so that it would have pitied any man's heart to have looked upon her." Basically, what that would translate in modern speak is, "Daggum, that girl looks so bad right now. I feel guilty for what I'm doing."
I know. She looked...
Basically, any man, regardless of his position, if they had seen her in that state, they would have felt guilty being involved in this. Because you got to think, 41, so she's 18 years old.
Yeah.
18. She wasn't stupid by any means, but she was not overly intelligent. She was not the intellectual that his previous wives were. She could read and write, barely. and any other lesson that she had, she would get she would get easily distracted and start telling jokes or laughing or just giggling, and she had no attention span.
Yeah. ADHD back in the day.
Yeah. Well, she never saw the king again. He never had anything to do with her again. Let me see where it could be.
And what was the charge that was brought against her? The affair?
Adultery? Yeah, which for a queen is bad. But Cranmer felt so bad for her, and he was so worried about her that he ordered every single object in the room that could be potentially used for suicide be removed.
Oh my God.
Because he was scared that she was going to kill herself. And I guess some part of him was like, okay, maybe there's a chance she's not going to die because I'm feeling so guilty now. But that didn't matter because we all know how that ends. Henry stripped her of her title of queen, and everybody's getting investigated. They find the letters about Culpeper and her, so it's kind of obvious. Derham is questioned, and he never admits to them having a pre-contract, which actually might have saved their lives if they could have just said that they were married and that there was miscommunications or that there was misunderstandings or a false understanding of the law. They could have thrown themselves at the mercy of the king or something, but that never came out. So Durham and Culpeper are both killed.
Beheaded?
Culpeper was beheaded. Durham was hung first, and then he was drawn and quartered. They hung him for a little while, made sure he survived it, and then they did the draw and quartering.
That's just mean. And people would watch, I'm sure. They're like, oh, wow, why? I'm like, no.
Now, Thomas Culpeper was, I believe he was a chamber boy for the king. He was someone, didn't have a high station, but he was with the king always, aside from when he was having his rendezvous.
Besides when he was with her,
yeah.
I guess.
So, I'm sorry. Here we go. I apologize. My notes are kind of mixed up because we had planned to do this a week ago, and so I'm trying to refresh where my notes were and what order I had them in, and it was not the order my mind was processing them in.
Well, I can finish it. Like, everyone was fine, and they went home, and everyone lived happily ever after.
I don't think that's how it
No,
played
that
out
never
at all.
happens, especially not in England. No,
Not in the Tudor?
So
Okay.
the Parliament decided that they would introduce what's called the Royal Ascent by Commission Act, which sounds really long and it's kind of draws away from what the purpose is. What it actually does is that it makes it to where the Queen Consort has to tell the king about all of her past relations.
Transgressions, I guess.
Her history.
Yeah, within 20 days. Has to talk about it within 20 days. Otherwise, it is punishable by death and treason.
Still enacted today?
I don't know.
It might still be.
That'd be terrifying. But yeah, so basically, if the queen does not reveal to the king everything she ever done, she could be put to death.
Queen Elizabeth is like, I did that the second and I got married.
Oh, it wouldn't matter for her because she's queen.
Oh,
she can
true.
do whatever she
That's
wants.
very true. That's true.
Well, Catherine was, of course, ordered to be executed, and supposedly she ordered a block to be placed in her room so she could practice how to lay her head on the block.
Aww.
Because I guess she didn't want to look disgraceful. She wanted to look somewhat respectful, somewhat elegant in her final moments because she knew people were going to be talking about her.
Yep.
And reports of when she died or when she was executed, which was 13 February 1542, she supposedly was very, very calm and regal and very, very proper. She said her piece, which was an appeal, and God save the king, that thing, which is what's always said by people getting executed unless they're idiots. Because you want to do everything you can to make the king not necessarily feel guilty, but feel that all the punishment that needs to be done is done so that you can protect your family. Because everything you say on the block is going back to the king because they report your final words to the king. So now there are rumors that she said, if I would have given up being a queen to be the wife of Culpeper or something stupid like that, nobody was there said she said that. It's kind of like just something that people came up with later on to make her sound even dumber.
Yeah.
She did need help climbing the scaffold, and she was very, very pale, apparently. But other than that, she maintained her grace and dignity, calmly went to her knees, laid her head on the block, and it got chopped off.
Bless her heart.
And I feel so sorry for this girl because
She was just a kid.
I know so many young girls that have made stupid mistakes in their life just because either it seems like fun or someone older convinced them to do it. I know a lot of those where an older girl has convinced a 15, 16-year-old or even younger to do something really stupid because, oh, it's fun. We're all going to do it. And it just never works out. And you always feel guilty for it. You always feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Peer
you do.
pressure.
Peer pressure is a thing, folks.
And like I said, Henry had no self-control. And that's always the worst thing is when you have a grown-ass man who should have some sense of responsibility, some sense of actual manhood, who just lets this little girl ruin herself, basically. I mean, he could have stood up for her and basically dissolved the marriage and said that this was a child that was manipulated. She was not what she promised or what was said at the wedding, but she didn't know any better. Instead, he basically executed this little girl because, who admittedly she was 18 at the time, but when all this stuff had started, she was 12, 13.
Well, also too, like he did that from the perspective of saving his face. Like it's to make her look bad and to make him look good.
Yeah, but if you look back at it in history, though, it does not make him look good. It makes him look like a tyrant. But that is my spiel on Catherine Howard. Let's move on.
May
to
she
Catherine
rest
Parr.
in peace.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess it's my turn.
Yeah,
Catherine
it's your
Parr.
turn. I went a little bit over time, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, Catherine Parr was the sixth and final wife of Henry VIII. Will, did you want
I said, thank God.
She was born in 1512, so Henry was 21 years older than Catherine. Now, Catherine's mother was Maud, and she had been a lady-in-waiting to Queen Catherine of Aragon and had actually named her daughter after the Queen. Her father was Sir William Parr, and he died in 1517, so Catherine was 5 years old when he died. She was sent to live with her uncle, Sir William Parr, in Hamptonshire. Sorry about that. And she was educated in Latin, Greek, modern languages, theology. So like most of Henry's wives, she was fairly well educated. Catherine was married twice before she married Henry. Her second husband, John Neville, the third Baron of Latimer, died in 1543. Now, after his death, Catherine attracted not only the attention of Henry VIII, but also Thomas Seymour, who was the brother of Jane Seymour. And not only was she attracted to him, or not only did she attract him, but she was attracted to him also. And some sources say they were actually engaged. But after Henry VIII asked her to marry him, she broke it off with Thomas Seymour. And again, we don't know exactly how far that relationship had gone, but she was very reluctant to say no to Henry VIII. And I think we can all understand that.
Oh, yeah.
So Catherine and Henry were married July 12th, 1543, 4 months after the death of her second husband. And Catherine and Henry had some common ancestors. They were actually third cousins once removed. I guess like most of the noble houses.
Most
there were
of his
some
wives.
Yeah, there were shared ancestors.
Keep it in the family, you know.
Jesus, my
Ew,
goodness.
gross.
That
It's
is
really
so
bad.
weird. I mean, I know it was normal back then, but that is so weird because that'd be like me marrying Hannah or Haley.
Yeah,
That is just so
cousin,
weird to
yeah.
me.
Gross.
But anyway, back to Catherine Parr. Under Catherine's influence, Mary and Elizabeth were restored to the succession, and she also had influence over the education of Elizabeth and the future Edward VI. She was interested in the Protestant faith, which made a lot of enemies in Henry's court. And there was actually a plot against Catherine in 1546. She and her ladies were known to have banned books, which is ground for arrest and execution charges of heresy. So, and a well-known active Protestant, Anne Askew, was actually questioned and tortured, but refused to give any evidence against Catherine and her ladies. Well, even though all that happened and there was really no one to say anything bad about the Queen, a warrant for her arrest, Catherine's arrest, was issued. But someone loyal to the Queen saw the warrant and told Catherine about it. Now, after finding out about the warrant, Catherine either pretended to be ill or had a panic attack. We're not sure which, but she was ill for a while. Henry came to visit Catherine and reprimand her on her outspokenness because she was very outspoken about the Reformed religion. Mm-hmm. And he accused her of arguing with him, and basically said, that's unseemly. A queen you can't argue with me. I'm king. And she kind of played on his ego, which, believe me, was a big ego.
No,
Yeah,
God,
sounds
the
like
biggest in
it.
the room.
Yeah.
Head fatter than this freaking, I don't even know. Like,
Fatter than our whole studio at this point.
Yep.
Yeah, well, Catherine responded that she was only arguing with him so that he could instruct her, and he fell for it. So he forgave her, and the warrant was canceled. Now, Henry VIII died January of 1547, and a few months after Henry's death, Catherine secretly married Thomas Seymour. Now, it was a little while after that they received permission from Edward VI to marry, but it was after the fact, and it was kind of their marriage was kind of looked on as suspicious. Why did you do it secretly? Why so quickly after Henry's death? But anyway, so Edward VI gave them permission to make it official. She was granted permission to be called the Queen Dowager. She was also given guardianship of Princess Elizabeth after Henry's death.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But that kind of went sour because she was living with Catherine. Elizabeth was living with Catherine, and there was a scandal. There was rumors that there was a relationship between the princess and Thomas Seymour.
I highly doubt that, but, they're going to try and talk anything bad about Elizabeth or Mary that they could at the time because there were people trying to get in good favor with Edward.
Right.
And they want to make every other option for ruler
Like,
look
not
bad.
a good, not a good eligible person.
Exactly.
Well, I guess the rumors had enough credit, they were believable that Princess Elizabeth was actually sent to live in another household in early 1548. And also in 1548, Catherine found out she was pregnant. Now, she'd been married 2 other times, obviously, and 3 other times when you count Henry, and had not had any children. So she was surprised at this point to have a child. Let me go back in my notes. I believe she was in her 30s.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder how old she was.
If you said 48 and she was born in 12, yes.
36. So she was 36 when she found out she was pregnant. And she gave birth to a daughter, Mary Seymour, who was born August 30th, 1548. Catherine died just a few days later on September 5th, 1548, of what they call back then childbed fever. Now, there were rumors also at the time that her husband had poisoned her so that he could marry the Princess Elizabeth.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, pretty bad. And there's no real record either of what happened to Mary Seymour. She went to live with another household, but after she was about 2, she kind of dropped off the radar. There's no historical record of what happened to the daughter.
Good for her because she came from a long line of
Crazy.
crap. Is what she.
Well, her father and her uncle were not exactly good people. And they, Thomas and Edward, they were very controlling. They actually fought each other over who would control, basically, be the regent for Edward VI. Or it was Edward VI, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were not good people. And I believe one of them actually died because he tried to kidnap him.
Right. Thomas Seymour was executed for treason 1549. So he lived just a year later, and that's why Mary Seymour was living with another household because her mother was dead, her father had been executed for treason, and like I said, she just kind of disappeared.
Good for her.
Well, more than likely, if given their status, she was given to a noble family, and it sounds weird, but she probably married one of the sons of that family.
Right, she was just absorbed more than likely into another household and married into another family. But Catherine is buried in the chapel at Sudley Castle, and her tomb can still be visited today. And I believe she is the only queen that's not buried in a royal property. So Sudley Castle does not belong to the royal family. And again, you can go visit it at any time.
I wonder how they. Well, I guess by that time he was dead. She was the Dowager Queen, I guess. No, she wasn't even at that point, was she? I guess
she would have had the title Dowager.
She
Queen.
had still had the
because she was married to the king when he died. Yeah,
so she would always
Queen.
have that title. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So my talk or my session on Catherine Parr was much shorter than Thomas's, and I'm sure there's quite a bit more that could be said about her. But basically, she was a very strong, I would feel like a very strong woman, well educated, and if she was willing to argue with Henry over the Protestant faith, she was, like I said, confident and sure of herself. But she knew where to draw the line.
Well, she'd probably be like, "Oh, you old man with your messed up hip or whatever you got going on." Like, shut up,
It was his femur, but yeah.
Oh, whatever, hip, femur, whatever you want to call it.
But yeah, these women were interesting, to say the least. Some of them you feel so bad for, and then some of them it's kind of like you should have known this going into this, that it wasn't going to be a walk in the park.
Well, just imagine if you had a National Enquirer back in the day for like Anne Boleyn or something like that. Like, oh man, the titles, there'd be an alien in there somewhere. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sure. It was just my favorite is still Catherine of Aragon. I'm very biased on that. I'm not going to hide it.
Anne of Cleves, that's my fave.
Well, I like Catherine of Aragon just because she was like a warrior queen. She was really tough.
Oh, she's
but
fearless.
I have to say, Anne of Cleves came out best of all of these.
Oh,
she
she
really
did.
did.
Undeniable. Yeah, for me it goes Catherine of Aragon, Anne of Cleves. I don't care about the rest.
Yeah. But listen, they don't know. I mean, listen, I feel like a lot of these were probably victims by circumstance too, you know.
And I respect that. It's just I still feel that whoever was involved, the family or the woman in question, should have known better at some point. Maybe not with Anne Boleyn, but Anne of Cleves, her brother should have known better. Catherine Howard, that idiot Duke survived one massacre of his family. He really stupid enough to go back for round 2.
Well, my thing is, like, what would you have done? Like if you said no?
Now, I will say, the Duke of Norfolk did survive it. Mm-hmm. He was the only member of his family that did.
Yeah.
Because he managed to... he ran away before the people started getting arrested. He went to some other castle and actually sent multiple letters begging Henry for forgiveness and saying, I had no idea. They never informed me. I thought she was a sweet, innocent girl, all sorts of things. Like, just basically being as low as he could and groveling like a coward.
So do we know how what happened? I mean, did he live to a ripe old life?
Oh, I have no idea how he died. I didn't care. After I found out he survived, I was like, you should have died.
You're like, in those days, a ripe old age of 44?
Yeah,
whatever.
As far as I was concerned, they could have just hauled him off and left him dead.
Gosh, I will say this. I'm like, no matter what, I mean, sounds like a lot of family drama.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'm glad, well, we still have family drama today, but I'm glad stuff like that isn't as prevalent as it was back then.
Oh, 100%.
Families fighting each other over property, families literally going to war. We're not talking about I'm going to beat the crap out of cousin Jim Bob because he said that this section of the land is his when actually it's mine.
Yeah.
And he stole my pig. We
pig.
cousins. Yeah, like the Hatfields and McCoys. They went to war over stupid stuff. These days, we just knock each other's teeth out and then share beer.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
that's true.
It's just how it is. And back then, they went to worse wars. Like the Hatfields and McCoys, they shoot people. These guys got up close and personal, butchered people, executed them, did some crazy stuff.
Well,
yes,
now,
ma'am.
Isn't there a war called the Cousins' War?
Yes.
In English history? Or was that the War of the Roses?
Well, that would be the War of the Roses, yeah.
There you go.
That's another podcast episode.
Yeah, we do need to cover that because...
And the Hatfields and McCoys.
Well, I would like to cover the Hatfields and McCoys. It was a great series.
Yeah, I'm for it.
Yeah. But all right, guys, that will be the end of our episode today. I went 20 minutes over you. I went quite a ways.
Mine was pretty short and sweet, just basic facts.
She didn't really make it that long afterwards.
Thomas just loves to hear himself talk.
I do. I sound so good. No, I really don't. I can't stand my voice. Whenever we play these back and I hear my voice, I want to grab an ice pick and take out my eardrums. It is so bad to me.
That's a bit extreme.
It is, but I can't stand it. It's worse than nails on a chalkboard. I would rather listen to hours of nails on a chalkboard than my own voice. I really would.
Well, Will, you and I just need to play this back and not have Thomas around.
I know. We'll just go over his parts.
Y'all never notice that I walk out the room when you play it back? I watch the sound levels. That's all I got to do.
That's all you have to do.
Because I'm watching us record right now, and I'm watching our sound levels. I know we sound good. That's all I need to know.
We always sound good.
Yeah.
Ready to wrap it up?
I'm ready to wrap it up. Thank you guys for listening. Check us out on Instagram and Twitter. And we do not have a Facebook. Do check out our YouTube channel, RTW's Wild History Ride. We have several videos already out. Some of y'all have already checked them out. So thank you for that. And catch us next time. We're talking about something very weird, something very interesting. Can I go ahead and reveal it?
You can reveal it.
We are talking about spontaneous human combustion.
Listen, I'm telling you, all the if y'all ever want to go down a rabbit hole, I showed Thomas a picture.
I will be traumatized for the rest of my life.
I was like, wow, this is very interesting. But yeah, we're going to talk about that next week.
Interesting or disturbed. Either way, we're talking about that next week. Y'all have a safe Memorial Day weekend and catch you next time.
Bye, guys.
Until next time.